Good afternoon. We are extremely pleased that you are here. It is good to come together for the purpose of co-creating. Do you agree? Yes. You are knowing what you are wanting, an evolving thing. So how are you doing on the contrast thing? Variety? Variety and contrast, does that mean awful and wonderful, or does it mean different? It can mean all of that, can't it? But from it comes focused clarity, yes? So do you feel that you are at your all-time clearest? You are. Not just in this physical body, but as source energy focused through a physical body, you are at your all-time clearest. There is more that is accumulated in vibrational escrow for the receiving than has ever been before. That is truly the advantage of being on the leading edge. Being on the leading edge means that you are in the furthest most place of receiving the results of the contrast which has caused you to focus. We always begin there. We continue to return there because as we visit with our physical friends, we rarely find one of you who is really excited about the contrast that brings you to this powerful place of summoning life. But from our vantage point, we have to talk about it because we are a big part of the life that you are summoning. Your contrast causes you to ask for the acceleration of your evolution. And long before you get there, we are there. It's an interesting cycle, isn't it? We are non-physical. We project you forward. Then you are leading edge. Then you project us forward. Then we summon you to that which you have projected. Isn't that interesting? So, without the basis which is us, you could not be. Without the leading edge that is you, we could not come forward. Because we can go forward in our non-resistance, we can then call you forward. It's that perpetual motion that you've been trying to create here in your physical form for a very long time. It's that we are all one that you've been trying to understand. It's that balancing of energy that you hear people talking about. It's that eternal spiral of life. It is the eternity that has always been promised. But we think that what you're beginning to understand is that the eternalness is taking place in this leading edge time-space reality, not back in the heavens after you croak. In other words, physical humans keep missing the point so much of the time that you are the leading edge. So we have come forth to remind you. And your true fulfillment only comes when you finally accept that. When we last visited with you, we were chatting about the idea of your worthiness and about the discomfort of that feeling of unworthiness. And we are wanting to return there just a little bit as we begin here today, because we see it as the basis. It's the final thing that once you get it into alignment, then you will really be in that place that you will be able to receive the fullness of all that is really you. And so then we notice that often as you're banging around in your physical environment, rather than paying attention to how you feel and working all day every day to close that vibrational gap between who you have become and who you are letting yourself be right now, we notice that sometimes what happens is, and it happens with almost everyone you know, there is this thing where because you have not been concentrating on closing your gap in order to adjust the way you feel, but instead you've been looking to this one or this one or this one, and you've been getting their feedback on their response to your behavior, and you've been utilizing that as your mechanism for guidance. And so there are a lot of people, in fact most everyone that you will ever meet on this planet at this point is still guiding themselves more by other people's response than they are by their own closing of their own gap, which means most people still are not in the place of utilizing the guidance system in any effective way that they were born with. And we're here to tell you that unless and until you are effectively utilizing your guidance system and you are effectively closing the gap, then you cannot possibly become or allow yourself to be this being that you are continually reaching for, so that fulfillment or worthiness cannot be. So then we watch as we see you finding unworthiness here and there, and we notice that one of the big reasons that it comes to you is because there are so many around you who are wanting to guide you by convincing you that it is a controlling of behavior or a controlling of circumstance that is necessary in order to live the life that you're wanting to live. And so you program yourselves and you program the new ones to come in this sort of conditional love or conditional life, which goes like, those conditions bother me, so we need to change them. And those conditions please me, so we need to promote more of those. And what happens in this process of attempting the impossible, which is corralling and adjusting and changing conditions so that you can then have emotional responses to improved conditions, what happens is you set yourself up for the inevitable disadvantage of forgetting about your own guidance system and trying to adjust your behavior based upon standards that keep moving around on you. And then what happens is, because you're not using the steady guidance that lets you know you're on track, you're on track, you're on your path, you're on your path, you're on your path, you're on your path, instead you're trying to please that one and that one and that one, who, by the way, are all changing in what they want from you. And the result is you again and again disappoint them because you are attempting the impossible, and in your disappointing of them, they reflect back to you their disappointment in you, because you have not performed what they needed you to perform. You haven't behaved in the way they needed you to behave in this moment that they said they thought you needed to behave so that they would be happy, and now they are not happy. They blame you, and you know what the result is to you? A little piece of your worthiness erodes. And little by little by little, as you attempt the impossible and disappoint everyone eventually, don't you? Don't you? When they make their happiness dependent upon what you do, then you take it pretty hard when they're not happy, understanding that they're the only ones who can really do anything about that. Jerry and Esther were laughing about the situation with the pictures, because in past cruises and in most situations, everyone just brings their camera and everybody's responsible for their own pictures. And if your pictures turn out, good for you. And if your pictures don't turn out, good for you. In other words, no responsibility. No one is taking that responsibility. And yet they discover, when they take the responsibility of making sure that you all get marvelous pictures, then all it takes is one adjustment on one camera to be incorrect, and everyone is disappointed. And it's sort of the same old thing that always comes around, that you are the creator of your own reality. And when you create your own reality, you do much better for yourself than anybody else can. So why is it that more people don't know that? In other words, why aren't you more determined to create your own reality? Why aren't you more ready to just tell everybody to buzz off? I'm going to create my own reality. And we think the reason is because little by little, your sense of who you are, your sense of worthiness, your sense of autonomy, your sense of value has been eroded, because you have not been listening to that one signal that is always consistently loving you and always consistently calling you. We want to say to you in very blatant terms that the source that is within you unequivocally loves you. The source that is within you unconditionally loves you. You cannot do anything that would cause you to stray from that constant, steady calling of that which is who you really are. And when you know that and listen for that, then your path of joy will be consistent and steady. It will show up for you 1,000 times a day in 1,000 different ways. In other words, it will be there to surprise and delight you, but most of all, to give you that steady breath of air that says, you are good, you are valuable, you are worthy, all is well. Goodness should come to you. And so the reason that we want to start here today talking about this is because the 3 steps of the creative process say step 1, ask. And you can't stop doing that. You've been asking. You have filled your vibrational escrow full of things that you are asking for, that you are uniquely asking for on behalf of yourself, on behalf of your source, on behalf of all that is. You are doing a magnificent job. And you can set goals if you want to, and you can write things down that you want to achieve, and you can make lists of the things that you hope for. You can set those goals. It cannot hurt. But in all of that, we want you to understand it's never necessary for you to sit down and make a list so that the universe will then know what you want. In other words, this Aladdin's lamp is not just 3 wishes. You have infinite amount of requests that you can put in and are doing all of the time. But where you must put your emphasis is upon now becoming vibrationally in alignment with what you're asking for. And if you've been practicing not liking yourself, if you've been practicing thinking that you're wrong, if you've been practicing feeling unworthy, if you've been feeling the disappointment that others are reflecting back to you because you haven't stood on your head in enough different ways to make enough of them happy, and in their unhappiness they are blaming you, and you've taken on that human characteristic of feeling unworthy, then it's not possible for you to get into the receiving mode. The receiving mode, which is step 3, is a vibrational match to your sensation of worthiness. So what we're really saying to you, and maybe we've been too long in getting to this, but it's time for you to hear it now, and it's time for you to know it now and begin to live it now. If you don't love you, you can't be in the receiving mode. All of the things that you've been asking for, the source has said, but of course you should have that. But of course you should have that. Of course you should have that. Yes, of course you should have that. Not only should you, but you may have that. In other words, it is done. Yes, but of course. But if you don't like you, if you don't like the way you look, if you don't like something that you said to someone and you're embarrassed by it, if you are upset that someone doesn't like you, if you've got that thing going on where you're not just in love with you, then you cannot be in the art of allowing. And so those around you, now most around you, have you ever known anyone who really loved themselves? They're hard to find. When you find one like that, they're easy to be with. They don't ask too much of you because they've discovered that loving themselves puts them in the place where they are utterly satisfied. Do you know that when you love you, the sensation of loving me matches so completely how Source feels about me in my physical body that the vibrational alignment is such that nothing else in the world matters. You know, you think that that's what being in love with someone is. It isn't, but that's the closest that most of you get to that. When somebody loves you and they're looking at your positive aspects and they're adoring you and they're reflecting all the good things about you back to you, and you are seeing it in their eyes, and you are therefore for a little while becoming a vibrational match to loving you because somebody's up close to you loving you, and it's much easier to love you when somebody's looking at you who loves you. So for a little while, usually in the early stages, usually in the very early stages of relationships, you love you because they love you, and as they love you because you love you. In other words, you are tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and you say, I'm in love, and we say, you're in alignment. You can call it in love if you want to. But then later on, when you start finding their flaws and they find your flaws, and the shine has kind of gone out of their eyes, and then you say, our relationship has changed. And we said, the relationship that changed was your relationship with who you really are. And you were letting your crutch of them be your catalyst for that alignment. But we want you to, independent from anybody else, find that alignment. We want you to leave this cruise decided, at least, that you're going to fall in love with you. Because until you fall in love with you, and friends, what's not to love? Until you fall in love with you, you cannot be in the state of allowing. You're only eking out a very small percentage of what is potentially there for you.